now know how Russiagate got started, and we know that it was all a lie started by the Hillary Clinton campaign. That the Hillary Clinton campaign realized she was in trouble because of her email scandal, which had broken in 2015 in the wake of Benghazi. We found these emails of hers that were weird, and people were like, what server was that on, and so on. And it created a problem for her all the way up to election day 20.
I could see them and hear them in my ear, and they said, Tulsi Gabbard, you're coming out and criticizing Hillary Clinton and her foreign policy record. Aren't you afraid of what she'll do to you? He asked me this on live television on MSNBC. And you're laughing. I laughed too. I was like, no, I am not afraid of what Hillary Clinton can do to me.
Megyn Kelly and Tulsi Gabbard stepping onto the stage to roast Hillary Clinton is like watching a perfectly synchronized tag team unleash a storm of razor-sharp words and relentless truths against a political titan who believed she'd already survived every battle. What follows isn't gentle critique, it's a spectacle of precision strikes. From her infamous campaign missteps to the controversies that have trailed her for decades, nothing is spared. Hillary's carefully constructed image begins to fracture under their piercing commentary, revealing the contradictions, scandals, and haunting errors that blocked her path to the throne she coveted. This is no ordinary takedown, it's a dissection, delivered with unflinching wit, blistering candor, and a fire that refuses to be tamed.
Of course, is the original election denier. I'm sure you voted for her in 2016.
Well, she's not an election denier.
She absolutely was the OG election denier.
First of all, she came out before the sun had risen to concede the election to Trump.
And then spent the next 4 years saying he was illegitimate. He was an illegitimate president.
Okay, well, first of all, she didn't say he was an illegitimate.
Yes, she did.
You tell me exactly what she said.
She said those exact words repeatedly.
They are using the same old tactic that the deep state's propaganda arm in the media uses. Whenever they come across something that is true and that doesn't go along with whatever their narrative is that they're trying to shove down the throats of the American people, they first usually ignore it, as they did when I first released these documents.
If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe and tap that bell icon so you never miss what's coming next. Megyn Kelly steps in with razor-sharp commentary that slices straight through the polished fod of establishment politics, exposing Hillary Clinton's long struggle to truly connect with everyday voters despite her decades in the public eye. With precision, she strips away the carefully scripted speeches and staged moments of empathy, revealing a figure more preoccupied with optics than authenticity. Kelly takes aim at Hillary's constant reinventions, transforming each recycled campaign slogan into a punchline mocking the missed chances, misplaced priorities, and the endless quest to rebrand a legacy already weighed down by contradiction.
Stole his first term as president. These absolute liars who run around trying to act like they're the protectors of democracy completely ruined it, tried to undermine it at every turn and at the highest levels with lies, with out-and-out lies that were really serious, and changed foreign policy and changed the course of history in this country in Trump's presidency. And there must be accountability. There has to be actual criminal accountability for those who lied. And I can't wait to see this administration.
Tulsi Gabbard steps forward with the rare authority of an insider, dismantling Hillary Clinton's foreign policy legacy with the precision of a scalpel. She doesn't just question decisions, she dissects them, highlighting controversial moves in the Middle East and the all-too-comfortable alliances with powerful elites. Tulsi reveals a record layered with contradictions and riddled with moral compromises, forcing viewers to see beyond the polished rhetoric. Her critique exposes the stark divide between the ideals Hillary claimed to uphold and the actions she ultimately pursued, sketching a portrait of ambition fueled more by power than by progress.
All of these pieces fit quite seamlessly together, creating a very clear timeline that shifted from before the election. The intelligence community almost uniformly saying essentially that Russia is trying to sow discord in the US election, but has no preference for one candidate over another. And then all of a sudden, Trump wins the election, surprising many people, both here and abroad, as we've learned in later documents that we've reviewed, that throughout that campaign, Russia believed that Hillary Clinton would win the election.
Together, Megyn Kelly and Tulsi Gabbard unleash a devastating takedown that shatters the illusion of Hillary Clinton's invincibility. Their voices intertwine like a one-two punch, exposing the cracks in her carefully polished armor, the scandals that never faded, the gaffes that became defining moments, and the lingering inability to inspire genuine trust. With unflinching candor, they peel back the layers of myth, revealing a career marked less by triumphs and more by controversies and squandered opportunities. What emerges is not just a roast, but a relentless reckoning and unmasking of a once untouchable figure now laid bare by wit, precision, and fire.
Our audience knows this, and you guys, but just for the record, let's play SOT 10.
I do think that he knows that he's an illegitimate president. I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way.
As I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
Trying to tell the American people the truth and expose these people, many of whom you just showed, for who they are as the propaganda arm of the deep state, which would have no power and no influence if they weren't able to feed their lies into a willing spokesperson through the propaganda media.
Hillary Clinton's political journey has been nothing short of a spectacle and ongoing drama of contradictions, soaring ambitions, and equally crushing disappointments. Tulsi Gabbard doesn't merely point to the obvious missteps. She shines a piercing light on the gaping disconnect between the meticulously crafted public persona and the tangled, often uncomfortable reality that lingered behind the curtains. It becomes the tale of a politician who perfected the art of commanding attention, of always remaining in the spotlight, yet consistently faltered when it came to capturing the genuine trust and hearts of the very people she claimed to represent.
So concerning about what Hillary Clinton is doing here is she is not only calling me a traitor, she is not only trying to smear my character, she's sending a warning out to every veteran, every single American, anyone who stands up against the warmongering foreign policies that really are her legacy, that have been so destructive and costly to my brothers and sisters in uniform.
Kelly's critique zeroes in on Hillary Clinton's communication style, a delivery polished to perfection, yet curiously hollow, rehearsed to the point of sterility, and always teetering on the edge of inauthenticity. She paints the portrait of a politician whose words, though eloquent, often felt scripted, as if lifted from a teleprompter designed not to stir souls, but to placate focus groups. Megyn Kelly's sharp observations highlight how Hillary's campaign speeches, saturated with lofty promises and sweeping visions, too often landed flat with voters who had grown weary of the endless parade of political doublespeak. Instead of igniting passion, Hillary's words seemed engineered to preserve an image, leaving behind the impression of a candidate clinging to relevance in a political landscape that was evolving faster than she could adapt. Enter Tulsi Gabbard, whose insider perspective adds a striking new dimension to the takedown. With the precision of someone who has lived the consequences of policy decisions, Tulsi dissects Hillary's foreign policy record piece by piece. From the destabilization of Libya to the spiraling chaos in Syria, she exposes how Hillary's interventions, hailed as bold leadership at the time, often produced devastating outcomes far from the campaign trail. Her critique lays bare a troubling pattern of interventionist policies that contradicted the very principles of peace and diplomacy Hillary publicly championed. Together, their voices reveal the widening gulf between rhetoric and reality, a facade carefully crafted, yet increasingly transparent to a skeptical public.
And as she got closer to Election Day, she decided to concoct two lies about Donald Trump to distract from her email scandal. She got the Steele dossier through this Fusion GPS company that her campaign paid, and she got this group CrowdStrike, which was the one responsible for the hack into that. That's the one that said that the Russians hacked the DNC.
Megyn Kelly doesn't pull a single punch when it comes to Hillary Clinton's attempts to control the narrative through the media. She exposes how the Clinton campaign leaned heavily on influence, shaping coverage in its favor while working behind the scenes to silence dissent. Any critique was swiftly met with fierce backlash, creating an atmosphere where open dialogue gave way to carefully curated messaging. What voters encountered wasn't the transparent, accountable leadership they craved. It was a meticulously engineered PR machine, determined to preserve a fragile image at all costs. Tulsi Gabbard sharpens the critique further, turning her attention to Hillary's struggle to adapt to a shifting political landscape. She underscores how the campaign underestimated the rising frustration of working-class voters, whose daily struggles were either dismissed or overshadowed by elite talking points. This disconnect, Tulsi argues, left gaping vulnerabilities in Hillary's platform, openings that rivals eagerly exploited to turn supporters into skeptics. The roast then delves into the infamous email scandal, an episode Kelly and Tulsi both describe as far more than a passing hiccup. Tulsi frames it as a symbol of something larger, a consistent pattern of questionable judgment and ethical lapses, one that deepened mistrust and eroded any sense of authenticity in Hillary's political brand.
I resigned as vice chair of the DNC in 2016, specifically so that I could campaign against Hillary Clinton in that Democratic primary.
Megyn Kelly wastes no time in spotlighting the glaring contradictions that defined Hillary Clinton's rise. She reminds the audience that Hillary's brand was built on the symbolism of breaking glass ceilings, yet her campaign tactics often seemed to undermine the very solidarity expected of a feminist icon. Instead of empowering a broader movement, her strategies sometimes echoed the same insular politics she claimed to challenge. Tulsi Gabbard adds another dimension, reflecting on the missed opportunities to forge genuine coalitions across ideological and social divides. Rather than cultivating lasting partnerships, Hillary's choices leaned on cold political calculations, moves that ultimately alienated potential allies and left many voters feeling excluded. As the roast builds momentum, Kelly and Tulsi don't simply recount missteps. They dismantle the myth of inevitability that surrounded Hillary's career. They strip away the assumption that her victory was ever a foregone conclusion, revealing a campaign riddled with strategic blunders, overconfidence, and a striking underestimation of her opposition. Beneath the media-driven aura of inevitability lay a candidate struggling to inspire trust from an electorate that was both diverse and deeply skeptical. The critique also lingers on the duality of Hillary's legacy. Kelly notes how she inspires fierce loyalty in some circles while simultaneously symbolizing political frustration for others. Tulsi echoes this, framing her career as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the limits of ambition when it fails to truly listen and respond to the public it seeks to lead.
Pieces that Glenn and I were getting close to in the discussion was the Hillary piece of this. And the evidence, because that is, they do name a couple of names in this appendix on who came up with this scam. And the name that we keep seeing over and over, as one of them at least, was Julianne Smith. Schellenberger writes Julianne. It's Julianne. He writes, the alleged creator of the plan was Julianne Smith, a Clinton policy advisor.
The conclusion strikes with the weight of inevitability, sharp, unflinching, and impossible to dismiss. Kelly and Tulsi's combined critique doesn't frame Hillary Clinton as a casualty of circumstance, but rather as the chief architect of her own undoing. They argue her legacy will not be etched in the history books for breaking barriers alone, but overshadowed by the opportunities squandered, the trust she could never quite secure, and the image that fractured under relentless scrutiny. This isn't delivered as casual criticism, it unfolds like a reckoning, a peeling back of myths and media spin, forcing a confrontation with the complex and often uncomfortable realities of one of America's most scrutinized political figures. Kelly and Tulsi remind viewers that in politics, as in life, authenticity and accountability outlast rehearsed speeches and carefully manufactured personas. Their dissection goes deeper than campaign stumbles. It drills into the very DNA of Hillary's political identity, the instinct to shapeshift, to be all things to all people, until the edges of authenticity were worn away. The result, they argue, was a figure who appeared polished yet hollow, a leader who longed to embody everything, yet ended up resonating with no one. What emerges is not just critique, but a powerful unraveling of a legacy built on contradictions.
So in this latest House report, they talk about how they also in the House, this is the House in 2020, pointing out that the ICA of 2017 ignored evidence that Putin seemed to be protecting Hillary Clinton in a couple of ways. It did not mention, for example, that Putin chose not to leak info he appeared to have on Hillary Clinton's health, including that she suffered from psycho-emotional problems and was on daily tranquilizers. We don't know whether that's true. We know that Putin appeared to have that intel in his pocket and chose
Criminal charges to the Department of Justice. I am not an attorney, but as I've said previously, when you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document that directly contradicts multiple assessments that were created by the intelligence community, the expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people.
Megyn Kelly pulls back the curtain on the carefully orchestrated nature of Hillary Clinton's public image, revealing a politician who meticulously constructed a persona meant to resonate with everyone yet, in the end, connected with far too few. The polished speeches, the staged moments of empathy, the repeated attempts to appear relatable, all of it felt more like echoes in a hollow chamber than genuine connections with real people. Kelly's critique slices to the core. When authenticity is sacrificed in favor of optics, voters sense it instantly, and that disconnect becomes a political death sentence. Tulsi Gabbard adds an even sharper edge, layering her critique with the authority of an insider. She doesn't just stop at pointing out the obvious. She digs into the cold political calculus that defined Hillary's choices, especially in foreign policy. From the destabilization of entire regions to the cozy ties with global elites, Tulsi lays bare the consequences of decisions that carried devastating ripple effects far beyond campaign speeches. Meanwhile, Kelly underscores how Hillary's climb to power was often marked by compromises that chipped away at her core values. Tulsi highlights the missed opportunities to take principled stands, arguing that this endless maneuvering only deepened mistrust among those she sought to lead.
So the Russians were able to hack Leonard, and that's where they saw the plan. And we now have in the Durham Annex, like full screen grabs of the Russian memos that the Dutch got their hands on and leaked to us, where the Russians are recounting exactly what they saw Leonard discussing about this Hillary Clinton fan and emissary, Julianne Smith, and how they were going to stop Trump, undermine Trump, but most importantly, distract from Hillary's email scandal.
Hillary Clinton's media strategy takes center stage, and Megyn Kelly wastes no time exposing how the campaign's obsessive attempts to control the narrative often backfired spectacularly. Instead of projecting confidence, the constant effort to silence dissent and micromanage coverage created an aura of defensiveness, an image of a politician shielding herself from scrutiny rather than embracing transparency. Tulsi Gabbard drives this point further, stressing that in an era where people hunger for honesty and openness, this calculated approach only deepened public suspicion and skepticism, a pivotal theme in the roast zeroes in on Hillary's strained relationship with the electorate, particularly the working-class voters who felt left behind. Kelly highlights how her messaging failed to grapple with the raw, everyday anxieties of economic insecurity. That vacuum, she argues, was eagerly filled by opponents who seized the chance to connect with voters on issues Hillary overlooked. Tulsi underscores this growing disconnect, pointing out how the failure to engage authentically with these communities widened the gap between her and the very people she aspired to lead. And then comes the infamous email scandal, dissected with surgical precision. Kelly ridicules the bungled damage control efforts, turning what should have been accountability into a drawn-out spectacle. Tulsi digs deeper, framing it not as an isolated blunder but as part of a troubling pattern: poor judgment, ethical lapses, and contradictions that haunted Hillary's credibility, even within her championed causes like women's rights.
This woman should be in jail. Literally, Hillary Clinton should be behind bars. And so should the people who worked for her who did this. This is so blatantly corrupt. She wanted to distract from her email scandal. She cooked up a plan to accuse Trump of being a Russian agent in order to distract from her own legitimate scandal. She made up a scandal about Trump being a Russian.
Megyn Kelly zeroes in on the uneasy tension between Hillary Clinton's soaring feminist rhetoric and the political tactics that, at times, seemed to undercut other women in her path. What could have been a rallying cry for unity often felt diluted. Kelly argues, by a brand of pragmatism that prioritized personal gain over genuine solidarity. Tulsi Gabbard builds on this point, stressing that these contradictions chipped away at what might have been a truly unifying message, leaving behind a sense of missed opportunity. As the critique gains momentum, Kelly and Tulsi work in tandem to dismantle the myth of inevitability that once surrounded Hillary's rise. They argue that her campaign's overconfidence became its greatest liability, blinding her to the growing power of grassroots movements and the shifting political tides beneath the surface. Kelly's sharp eye highlights how Hillary consistently underestimated the electorate's hunger for authenticity, while Tulsi underscores how this miscalculation proved fatal in an era that rejected establishment politics. The roast crescendos into a striking evaluation of Hillary's legacy. Their combined voices stress that true political success is never just about breaking barriers. It demands building trust, forging real connections, and listening to those whose voices too often go unheard.